Hey, and welcome back to ThisBytesForYou. You may have seen my $900 budget build. It was an awesome machine, but maybe not powerful enough for everyone. Then you've seen some of my $3,000 plus builds as well, and those are awesome, but we can't all afford that. And I get it. So in this build, this is a more budget-friendly, still powerhouse, $1,500 machine that should be able to take care of anything and everything you need. It's this very PC you see right here. I'm gonna show you how I built it, and then in another video, I'm gonna show you how I wired managed, how I put together all the cables and made it look beautiful. I warn you, I did mess up a little bit. This was my very first vertical build, so it was a little bit of a headache, but I like to take you on that trip with me. Before we start, don't forget to click like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton building the channel, bring you bigger, better, and more. But anyway, enough with my talking. Let's get started with the build. All right, so starting off, before we touch any of the components, make sure to ground yourself. You can either wear an ESD static wristband or an anklet, or what I like to do is while I'm building, before I touch anything, I go ahead and ground myself and I touch the inside of the case. Make sure to not touch an area that is too painted. Just go ahead, just touch all the aluminum, the steel, the metal. That way you get all the ESD out of your system. You don't want to damage components. So components have come a long way. They're a lot less prone to getting damaged by ESD, but still you don't want to play with fate. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the CPU. So what we're going to do is this little lever right over here, we're going to go ahead and pull it out just slightly and then lift it. That goes ahead and slides the tray open, allowing you to actually insert a CPU. Okay, turning the board around a little bit, you're going to notice there's a little triangle right there. That triangle is going to align up with this little gold tab right over here. That tells you exactly where that pin is so that you can properly drop your CPU in. Okay, so literally all you do is line it up a little tiny bit. Don't push down. And see, when it's perfectly lined up, the CPU just drops into place. Now afterwards, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just pull that arm down and just push it a little bit. That goes ahead and pushes it under that piece of plastic that holds the arm down from just flapping open and closed. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install the memory. Now, if you have 4 sticks, you can just skip it and fast forward to the part where we install the memory. But if you only have 2 sticks, you're going to want the memory to be in dual channel. Now, the way you find out if the memory is in dual channel, you can, of course, use the manual, or you can look at the silk screening that most boards have on here. So there's DIMM B1, DIMM B2, DIMM A1, and DIMM A2. To keep everything dual channel, if you have 2 sticks, you're going to be installing it in DIMM B2 and DIMM A2, which is kind of hard to see, but you can see it now. So DIMM B2, we're going to go ahead and push this little arm out and this little arm out as well. Those are the locking mechanism. Now on Asus boards and maybe a few others, you don't have to do it to this side, but if your board does have it on both sides, just do it on both sides. For this memory, we're going to be using the Patriot Viper RGB 4133 megahertz. To install the RAM, you'll notice there's a little bar right over here, a separator. That same separator is right on here on the memory. So if you install it wrong, you'll notice your memory is just going to seesaw there. You can't really install it. So just flip it around, put it over here, and just snaps right into place. You'll notice it slid in that little locking mechanism. Then we'll go ahead and repeat the process on DIMM A2. All right, so we've installed the CPU and we've installed the RAM. So this board gives you the ability to either have storage on your standard SATA ports, gives you 6 SATA ports, Again, this is the Asus ROG Strix B550-F gaming Wi-Fi board. But this board also gives you the ability to install 2 M.2 SSDs. This is a 550 chipset, so this slot is by 4 and this slot is by 3. So we're going to go ahead and install on the by 4. So there's screws right over here. We're just going to take those out. And then we could just pull it out. Now be careful. There is a little thermal coating right over here. It's kind of a 3M adhesive. That's going to go ahead and be a heatsink for your SSD. Okay, so we're just going to put this aside for now. Notice I put the strip face up so it doesn't get stuck to the table. For the M.2, we're going to go ahead and use the RocketQ NVMe PCIe M.2 1 terabyte drive, which comes in this awesome little tin. All right. So now that we have the M.2 socket exposed, okay, you'll notice the socket's right over here. And like the memory, it has that little divider right here. And that divider is right over here as well. Okay, so we're going to take that M.2, kind of just set it right in place and lightly push it in. Now we're going to use the M.2 screw, which is in the motherboard box, or it could be in the M.2 right over here. So we'll just push that down, lock that in place, and just screw it in. Okay, now with that in place, we're going to go ahead and put that heat shield back in. So just match up the screws. Then screw one side in, about 50%, about 2 screws, 2 screw turns, and on the other side, we'll go ahead, screw it in 100%. Then we'll come back over here and screw that in 100%. All right, so we've just installed the M.2 right over here. Now in my build, I have 2 M.2s. This by 4 is going to be for my OS, and this by 3, a crucial P2 M.2 500 gig, is going to be for my D drive, maybe where I put all my games on or applications. So we'll go ahead, unscrew that heat shield, and we'll just repeat that process. All right, so we've installed both SSDs, the memory, and the CPU. Now this is going to be a liquid cooled unit. Now depending on your liquid cooling unit and even your air cooled CPU cooler, you might have to take off these clips right over here. These clips are used to retain your heatsink for your CPU, but not everything uses them. So this particular liquid cooling unit does not. So we're going to go ahead and just remove this screw and this screw and take it off. And then we'll just repeat that process for the other side. Okay, now be careful. I do recommend saving these maybe in the motherboard box along with the screws. That way, in case you ever want to use air cooling or something that uses those brackets, you don't have to go out and buy new ones. For the Thermaltake TH360, we're going to be using this back plate. So if your board comes with a back plate, we're just going to go ahead and remove it. Like we've already removed the brackets before. And now I'm going to slide the board aside just for right now. Okay, now this is the back plate that's going to be used on the back of the motherboard like we removed before. So what we're going to do is first off grab these guys, that on the back it's just smooth. There is no Phillips head. And we're going to go ahead and place them right here, 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 and here. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and grab these washers and just drop them in, pushing them all the way down. And now you'll notice on this plate, there's the text AMD. Okay, with that there, we're going to go ahead and grab this square, take out the center, comes with this pad. Then we'll go ahead and remove this adhesive and place it right over here. That way none of the metal is exposed to the back of the board. And that's another reason why these washers are here. So now we'll go ahead and lift this. Remember, AMD text is right over here. We want that to be towards the top over here. We'll lay the board flat like this on its top. Since we have everything there, nothing's going to happen. So with the AMD facing right up here, we're just going to go ahead and drop these screws through the screw holes. Now holding this with one hand, we're going to flip the board over. All right, now everything is sticking out right over here. Now we're just going to go ahead and drop these over the screws. And that's going to go ahead and keep those screws in nicely. All right, and now just placing the liquid cooling unit right up here and the cold plate and pump right down here. We're going to go ahead and grab the thermal paste, take off the top, and we'll just dab a little right in the center. A little bit larger than a pea, and just go ahead and pull that out just to suck it back in and keep it just in case you need it for later. Okay, so the cold plate and the pump comes with these already on it. You can just pull it out if it doesn't match your screw holes, which the one it comes with is for Intel. And we'll go ahead and slide the AMD one in that same place. It's nice the way they did that. At this point, now we can go ahead and remove this. Just make sure not to touch this with your fingertips. It's not going to kill it, but it's not going to help cooling it either. Now we'll go ahead and lift it. And I like to put it with the logo facing correctly. Thermal take like that. All right, now it is in place. You can go ahead and put the radiator down. And now we'll grab these screws and just go ahead and place it right over here. Not all the way down. For right now, we're just going to go ahead and settle everything in place. Notice I put one over here. Now I'm going to go ahead and put one over here, just so that it holds down. Now one over here. And then the last one right up here, which is hard for even me to see. But this one I'm going to go ahead and screw down all the way, since we already have all the rest in. Not incredibly tight, but enough that you're not easily going to be turning it anymore. Okay, now we'll do the diagonal one. Okay, so now all four are in place. They're all secured. Again, you don't want to tighten it too much. You don't want to crack the board, but you want to tighten it enough that you feel like it's secured. All right, so at this point, now we're ready to go ahead and install this into the case. So before we put the motherboard in the case, we have to first look at all the standoffs and verify that there are enough and in the correct place for the motherboard. One of the ways to do it is just place the board in there and just look at all the screw holes. The other way is you count all the standoffs. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 standoffs. And on the board, I know we're at a weird angle, but there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, kind of hard to see this one, 7, 8, and 9 standoff as well. And they're all in the correct placement inside of the case, so we can easily start that. So most people prefer to build with the case laying down. It's just really hard for me to demonstrate the installation. So what I'm going to do is build it standing up. Now we'll just go ahead, grab both the radiator and the motherboard. Since the radiator is already on, it needs to be close by, and you can kind of have it dangling there. And then we kind of just line the board up. Now normally you want to install an IO shield, but on this board, just go ahead and drop this in place. On this board, the IO shield's already on the board, so you can never ever forget it. All right, so coming back around over here, we're going to go ahead and grab the motherboard screws that come with the case. Then we're going to go ahead and line up the standoffs. And then I like to screw the middle one in first. Now screw this one in second. And you don't want to screw them in 100% either, because we're making sure that all the screws are in the correct spot as we're going. Now the bottom right hand corner. And this is going to go ahead and help you line everything up. All right, so now we have it diagonally like this. And now we can just go out and fill out all the other screws. And at this point, you can go ahead and screw in 100%, or you could wait till the very end. Don't worry, the radiator is being held in this spot here in the case. All right, now I'm just going to go back and make sure all the rest of the screws are in 100%. And like before, don't over tighten anything, because you will snap the board. Just put it in nice and carefully. Okay, now with this installed, it is almost impossible with this fan and this fan in place, or should I say it is impossible to fit this radiator in. I've tried various different methods of getting it in. It's impossible. So what we need to do is either remove this one or this one. Now, because of the way of the placement here of the tubes, in order to make it work, we're going to have to install it like this. The problem is then these tubes are going to hit and push down on the video card, something we don't want to happen. So what we're going to end up doing is placing it at the front. This case gives you a great opportunity to do that. So right here, they allow you to insert, like I did before actually, insert that radiator and you'll be fine. Mind you, there is a fan right up here, so I can't get it flush, but I still have more than enough room for a pull configuration there. And actually on the opposite side of the case, which I'll show you in a second, enough room for pull as well. So push pull if I wanted to. Okay, so now turning the case towards the front, just going to put my hand in a little groove right in here and pull the front panel off. Now, you'll notice there are no cables. The Montech Sky 1 has an awesome thing right over here for wireless. So there's a connector here and a connector right up here. So you don't have to worry about pulling cables or anything along those lines. Great design. So now I'm just going to go ahead and take off that front fan. Now that we know we're going to go ahead and put the radiator right up in front, now we need to figure out if we're going to put the fans in the front or the back for a push-pull. It's really up to preference. And if you had other fans, you can actually put a push-pull for all of them. All right, so since the front of the case already has some RGB lighting, we're going to keep the RGB inside the case. So we're going to do a pull configuration. So keeping the fan in the front because that's going to be right up against the radiator. We're just going to place it like that. Now these fans are great because they're able to daisy chain to each other. So I have this fan here. Maybe I'll put it like this. They include really long cables, or they come with really long cables, I should say. And then I'll place the second one right here. And the third one right here. Notice I have them on the very top, which actually will be the side. This will be the inside towards the back of the case. The side you won't see, that way for better cable management. Okay, so now we'll grab the very first cable. Okay, so it comes with two cables, but this is the one we want to focus on. Then with that, we'll grab the cable for the other fan. What we want to happen is we want this to start the chain, this to continue the chain. So what we'll do is plug it in just like that. So now we have two fans connected. Okay, and now we'll grab the third and final fan, unless you had more, but we only have three. And then we'll go ahead and connect that right here. All right, so that's all connected. Let's go ahead and screw these into the radiator. All right, now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and grab one fan, again with the cable facing towards the back of the case. We'll go ahead and put it on the radiator. And you'll notice on the radiator, there's a bunch of screw holes. Those are for the fans. So we'll just go ahead, put it here. Now the radiator comes with these long screws that we just slide through here. Then we can just go ahead with our fingers, kind of a pilot screw. Then we'll do the same on the diagonal side. And now we can go ahead and screw it in. Same way, screw it in about 50 or 80% of the way up here, 50 or 80 over here. And then on the last one, then we screw it all the way. And now I screwed that one in 100%. So now I'll screw in the rest. And I'll do the same for the remaining fans. All right, now with that done, we can just grab that radiator. We'll grab all the cables and kind of put them off towards the top. That way we can manage them on the cable management video coming up soon, and just drop it in that little hole. All right, so now we just have to screw the radiator into the case. All right, now that we have the radiator in place, first off, we want to make sure that where these tubes are elevated above where the pump is. So right over here, there are a few inches elevated, but we need to raise it a little bit more. So now as we're raising it, just make sure that when you see a screw right up here, you see another screw right down here. If not, you're going to raise it all the way up here, and you're not going to be able to screw it in here. And then you're going to hear vibration against metal against metal. Okay, once we get this one just a little bit screwed in, see how that still has some mobility there. Then we'll go ahead and line up this bottom right side, or bottom left, depending on which side of the camera you're on, or the case, but either way, you get what I mean. All right, that one you can screw in 100% because everything is going to be perfectly exposed. All right, and I know the cabling is a huge mess right now, but we're going to fix it all in the cable management portion of the video. Okay, so then at this point, all we need to do is install the video card. All right, so now I'm gonna show you how to install the Asus TUF Gaming 5700 XT Evo. Sweet card. It is a big card. Now, this case gives you the ability to install it either horizontally, like we've been doing it for years, or vertically. I'm going to show you both. And so first off, what we're going to need to do is along the back, take off this screw and this screw, but actually we're going to need to take off this screw and this screw first. All right. So the funny thing on this case is if you don't hold these shields in place, the IO covers, they go flying off. So kind of funny, but so in order to do it horizontally, they make it a little bit difficult, not impossible, just more difficult. Okay, now that we have access to it, now we can unscrew this screw and this screw. So second and third screw. And now we're also going to need to remove these three screws. We need to take off this entire compartment and then put it back afterwards. So it's kind of like they really want you to use the vertical, and that's okay. The fact that they give us both is great. Now, the only thing is you need your own ribbon cable, but I got one just for you. We need to remove this screw as well. This is holding the entire thing in place. Okay, and that takes out this IO shield too, but again, that's okay. We can always put it in place later. Now let me bring you up. Since this case has a retention mechanism to hold the card in place, we're gonna kind of need to move it out of the way right now. So that should be good. I've already dropped it a little bit. This is a long card, perfect. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and slide the card in here. And before we do that, just make sure this is pushed down like that. That locks the card right in place with this right here. So we'll slide the card in, and I brought you up above so you can see that going in. So we'll put that little locking mechanism in place and just push it in. And you see how that locks the card in place. Let me zoom you in a little bit more. So I unlock it, holding the card so it doesn't fall out. Whoops. Okay, so these teeth right here, they're going to fit into this slot right over here. And this hook part is going to feed right in through here. So like that. And notice that that locking mechanism is down, just went up a little bit, but notice how it locked in place. Now we have the card physically installed. Okay, now we can do everything in reverse to put this all back into place, making sure that everything is sealed. And by the way, you'll notice that the card might be a little sagging. We can just put this right in place. And that holds the card in place, but we'll take care of that later on. Okay, so now we'll take the card out. Okay, and now we can put it in like this, but we need to buy a separate cable. And I have that linked below in case you want to check it out. So we're going to need to put this back. So just kind of reverse the way we did it before. And in order to do this, we are going to need to remove this tray. All right, now with that gone, we'll go ahead and slide this cable into place in the PCIe slot. Again, making sure this is unlocked. Okay, that locks into place as it did before. Now, I made sure I got a longer cable. You don't need it that long, but of course we can just move it around some. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and slide the card in place right here. And then screw the card in place. And I'll do it right now from this side, and I'll show you from the other side in 1 second. All right, so the card's in place. Now let me show you from the other side. All right, so coming in from the back, it's gonna be a little bit different than you install most video cards. So most video cards, you would just slide it in and screw it and you're done. But on this one, we're actually going to be sliding the teeth right here, or not the teeth, but these pieces of metal from the card right here. And then we're going to be screwing the card in as we regularly would right up here. All right, so coming back around, it actually looks like it wouldn't have been a bad idea to keep that tray in place. It would have helped the card retain a little bit better. So that's with the tray in place. That's without it. It's kind of dangling, putting a lot of strain on the case. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back. Putting the tray back on, we can see the card rests on the tray Maybe not 100%, but still much better than if that tray were not there. All right, so now with the card installed vertically and the tray put in there correctly, we're gonna go ahead and install the Arctic Bionics P120 ARGB fans, and we're gonna go ahead and put them along the top of the case. With the case laid down flat, the liquid cooling unit comes very close to the top, and these are very, very, very thick fans, or more thick than usual fans. For example, this is the fan that the case brought. And then right next to each other, you can see that is thicker. You may not be able to tell with the white for the RGB, but it is thicker. So we have to make sure we understand that it's thicker. But aside from that, these have a very cool feature on them. So for this, since we're going to be installing it like this, rather than having a cable that connects into another cable that connects into another cable, which we can do if we wanted to, in the box they include this little guy. So we'll have this little connector right over here that says connect. So we'll plug in that little adapter, or pin I should say, and then we'll plug it right into where it says connect. It's really tiny, but that is so cool because it allows you to grab another fan and just connect the two. Now, because it is such a tight connection, like you can't be moving around with it, it's best to only do two at a time and then add the third one in afterwards. And then you'll leave the last one for power coming out. You see, this has power over here, so then we're gonna connect it to connect on the third fan. So what we're going to do, because the case already has that liquid cooling unit, which by the way, in this case, you can fit two 360 radiators, but it might just be a little tight. So we'll just drop that in. Okay, and just making sure that these two are tied together still, because that connection can come loose pretty easily. And now you'll go ahead and screw this one in. And the same way as I mentioned before, go diagonally. Okay, now that those two are together, we'll just go ahead and we can let go and then screw these guys together. All right, then grabbing the third one, popping in the adapter onto connect, we'll have the power right over here. But on this one, at the very end, we'll want to attach the power cable, which will be right over here. And we're going to just leave it free floating over here for now. We'll fix that later on during the wiring portion. We'll slide the fan in and then make that connection. Not gonna lie, that was not easy at all. All right, now I need 3 hands in order to move the camera and hold this in place. So 1 sec. Not the best angle, I apologize. But as soon as I can let go of this, I'll fix the camera. All right, now holding that in place, we'll screw everything in place. So this looks cool and everything. Mind you, it's not cabled. That's coming up right now. But this has actually been one of my most challenging builds. from a radiator that's incredibly long, longer than I thought it would be, to these new Arctic RGB fans, connecting everything. This part's gonna be fun. So, oh, and then also, not to mention the vertical video card. This has been my first vertical install. It's cool, just a few things I wasn't prepared for, but I was able to resolve them all. Hopefully I've helped you if you come across this combination or even one of this piece of the puzzle. I've built thousands of machines, but this has literally been my most tough build. So anyway, coming up next, the wiring portion. I'm going to show you not only how to connect everything, but I'm going to show you how to connect everything and make it look nice and pretty. I'm hoping it's going to be quick and easy, but I mean, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. It helps me out a ton. And if you feel like this has helped you, and if you'd like, go ahead, buy me a cup of coffee. Really appreciate it. It helps ThisBytesForYou keep working. But anyway, I really want to finish this. See you soon. See you guys.